So, Mark is our senior technical solutions architect at Cisco Duo Security. He's based out of the Cisco RTP campus, been in security, identity, and access space for over 15 years. Outside of work, Mark enjoys running, being outside, and hanging with his family, and has four awesome daughters. Wow. I bet that is a constant flow of activity and joy having four daughters. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun.
Great, great. Well, thank you, Mark, for being with us today, and we look forward to hearing your talk today on making remote work.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being here. It's sad that we can't be in person. It's a much better interaction, I believe, but I think we'll get there, right? But this what this whole that's what this whole discussion's about, right? Is being remote, and it's kind of pushed us that way, and it's been doing that for a while though. And so that's what we're going to discuss today. And I'll start by just bringing up a quick slide and discussing the history. We've probably talked about this before, or if you've heard this before, but there was a traditional, network at one point where we had four walls around us and we had rules and regulations and policies that we could apply to that specific rule, right, inside of those four walls to access the data and applications and the devices that were available to us to do our jobs. And then we've kind of branched out on the left-hand side. You can see, I mean, if there was a remote worker, they were configured with a specific VPN client that would give them access back within the perimeter and then apply those same policies and those same rules. And as we've moved outside to the right side, with all these question marks over the last couple of decades, there's been a lot of additional devices, a lot more pieces that people want to use to be able to get their job done. And as our cloud infrastructure and the scalability of cloud has matured over the years, there's been more and more access outside of the environment as well, including IT, administrative panels, even monitoring solutions or directories and identity services outside of our traditional walls and perimeters. And this has led to a different discussion on how to secure all of this environment, and another look at how this looks and what some of those things are. Could be your remote workers, your employees, etc., or cloud applications, as we talked about, hybrid applications where there's some on-prem, some off-prem pieces of those applications, contractors, mobile devices, personal devices, people bringing their own phones or mobile laptops, et cetera, into the environment. And the problem isn't that there's not enough tools or there aren't a lot of tools to solve these problems. The problem is that it's complex, right? And it's probably the opposite. There's probably too many tools out there today to try to solve these problems. And when we get complexity in the environment, it's hard to secure all of those pieces, which leaves something open potentially to fall through the cracks and for that attacker to get in. And we're not going to spend a ton of time on this today, but there's different ways that they're trying to get in, right? And these are four of the main ways that people are trying to exploit us as companies and individuals. Data focused exploits, phishing exploits, ransomware, and the key that I want to get across today. There's some backing behind most of these, right? Over 77% of these, the latest breaches that we've had have come from weak or compromised stolen credentials, right? And 70% of those attacks came from an endpoint, right, or a compromised endpoint. And with that information, it really leads us to a couple of questions. right? And those questions are, okay, one, how do we stop an attack with someone who has, stolen, albeit legitimate credentials, right? And then how do we stop or prevent a device with poor hygiene from accessing critical applications? If we can do those things, we're going to eliminate a large risk posture that we have in our environments. And you've probably all heard of this before. It's kind of a buzzword. We're going to talk a little bit about the history of zero trust and the model, and how Duo fits into that model, and how we're able to protect organizations by verifying their identity of the users, and ensuring the health of the devices before connecting to applications every time they try to authenticate or access a resource in your environment. So the history behind zero trust, if you want to go take the time to do a bunch of research on this, it starts way back. A model in 2007 with the Jericho Forum, and then John Kurttervog, and then Google was very vocal about their process to deploy zero trust. And through that process, they had a few key takeaways. And one of the main takeaways from the journey that they went through to kind of revamp their entire environment based on a few breaches that they had that happened inside their four walls, was that the environment needs to be consistent. There needs to be consistency in access. And that's where we hope as Duo we can come in and make that a consistent experience across all users, across all devices, and across all your applications. And we have a model that we typically will walk our customers through. And we're going to spend the majority of the rest of the session kind of going through this model. And so it's, confirm the user is who they say they are. Confirm that they are the person that's supposed to be logging in. And then while they're logging in, gain insight into all of the devices that they're using to access those applications, where they're accessing the applications from, et cetera. Just gain that insight and to do it agentlessly. Ensure that those devices are secure and enforce contextual policy. And access, all applications that they need to access. And it's important to note that this could be a journey, right? And that this doesn't have to be taken on all at once. And that, in fact, based on, most of our customers' experience, they already have some of these things in place that can be taken advantage of and used. And so have already probably started down this process, even if they haven't, officially, built a program around it yet. So one of the first things that we have to do, and this is one of the things that Duo does really well, is verify the identity and make sure they are who they say they are with strong authentication. And that's key because there are other options for strong authentication that used to be around and that I still have actually seen around. I had to sign up for a bank account at a credit union I won't name. It was I was still using security questions, which coming from Duo was like, oh my gosh, security questions is really not multi-factor, right? It's two things that I know. So there's actually a really cool study that was done it was actually a long-term study done by two different research groups from New York University and California University, San Diego. And I recommend taking a look at it. But they actually go through and kind of like, okay, what are the different modes of attack that people are using, like the ones we discussed earlier, and then what are the mechanisms of specifically just MFA or multi-factor authentication on how effective are they? And one of the graphs as part of the study that I pulled out of the study was this, and it basically says, okay, well, if they're trying an automated bot, right, what's effective? If they're trying a bulk phishing attack, what's effective? And if they're doing a targeted attack, what's effective. And you can obviously see that the device-based multi-factor, like even phone and SMS, which are traditionally, according to NIST and other government regulations, determined as not as secure, are more secure than kind of a knowledge-based challenge, like where were you last, or what was your phone number, or something like that. That's basically two things that and so that ranges from a 10% all the way up into the high 90s, depending on what type of multi-factor you're using. And so it's a huge gap, right? So if you're using still a knowledge-based multi-factor authentication to gain access into certain resources, there's only 10% chance that you're going to be not phished or not vulnerable to a bot attack, all the way up to 94%, or higher, right? If you're using a device-based authentication, depending on what type of device-based authentication you're using. And so Duo tries very hard to give all of our users a great experience by providing the different mechanisms or multi-factor authentication options that you could think of. By far, our most popular is the push, right, which is something that we've invented and patented, and it's since been copied by most of the industry, which is really cool, and kind of satisfying that it's something that is widely adopted. And then we offer all of these other options as well, including things like soft token. If, for example, you don't have access to the internet, like when I'm flying or on the road, I'll use the soft token where I don't have internet access. As well as U2F, which are security type keys, which are very secure and kind of championed from the FIDO Alliance, and also include things like WebAuthn, if you're familiar with that. And then wearables, biometrics, things like Touch ID on your Mac, or even hardware tokens. And so to really make sure that multi-factor experience is seamless, easy, yet secure and not knowledge-based. So the second step on that process, if we remember back to that graph going up to the 5-step process, is to gain visibility. So one of the key things that we can do every time someone authenticates into a Duo Protect resource is to gain visibility into those devices. And this is agentlessly. So nothing on the device, nothing to deploy. So you deploy Duo upon an application, and within the next time someone accesses it, we're gaining insight potentially into those devices. And not just the mobile device, but not just the laptop, but both. So the device that's being used for authentication, as well as the device that is accessing that application itself. And so we can understand what is the hygiene of the device, and understand where in the posture it should land as far as what we're going to give it access to. And why is that key, or why is that important? Well, Gartner has stated recently that it believes in 2020, 99% of the attacks that are performed will be vulnerabilities that have been already known. And I have available patches for them, right? So if we can reduce the amount of devices that are behind on patches, it's much more likely, right, that they're not going to be attacked, right? It takes a lot of money and time to build these large automated attack mechanisms. And so they do it with exploits that are well known. And so those users who are patched are going to be much less likely to be affected than those who are not. So the third step in this process moving forward is to create policy around that information. So which users should be able to access which applications and from which devices, and are those devices at a level of posture at operating system, browser version, plugins that we expect them to be at before we allow them to gain access into the environment. And if they aren't, then we deny them access until they do patch. That happens to me quite often, where Duo protects all of their resources, applications that I access. And when a new update comes out, I'll be immediately notified that I need to update pretty soon, or I'm gonna no longer have access to my environments. What's cool about it is it's seamless, right? It just tells me what I need to do, and it actually will walk me through the update, which is pretty amazing. So if we jump to the next step, right? So now we have user insight, we have device insight. We're able to ensure the device is at a health standard or level that we want. Then it's about applying these policies, these contextual policies, in a way that is easy and effective, so that it's not a roadblock or a hamper for the user to gain access to do their job. And so there's some applications in this example that if they're using a personal device, that we don't want them to have access to. And so if even if it's a known device, or the software is up to date, great, and it's got great security, then I'm still going to potentially not let you get in, because you're not on a corporate owned device, or a device that we have specifically allowed to enter into this environment. It has to be a good experience for the end user, because we all know that without a good experience, then users will try to get around the security. And this was a study that we did. We found at Duo that, and we have, I think we have over 25,000 customers today. We have over 10 million authentications daily, and 500 million a month or something like that. And so through access and studies with our customers, we found that those people who have devices that allow for ease of use, like iPhones or Androids that have Touch ID or Face ID capable, 93% of those people enabled screen lock, right? So you can't get into the phone without undoing that. But only 78% of people who have phones that don't allow for Touch ID, or Face ID or thing like that, have put screen lock in, because they had to type in a code, 6-digit code, to unlock the screen. And so much larger percentage of people don't do it if the experience isn't easy and doesn't flow like it should in the environment. And so the way we can handle this within our environments is through these security policies, is at 3 different layers. So I have the ability to apply policy at a global level, where we can apply policy to all of the users and all of the applications that people are accessing through Duo. And then we have the ability to do layered application-based policies. So maybe there's a stricter application. A good example is one of our customers, Centara Healthcare, who had specific applications like EPCS, prescription electronically of drugs, that needed a very strict policy to allow only certain users on certain devices with certain qualifications, including those devices being screen locked and encrypted before accessing that information, which is also a regulation for HIPAA Omnibus. And they were using, at the time, an MDM, which was not easy. The doctors and nurses were fighting the deployment or accepting the deployment of MDM on their devices, their personal devices. And they thought they had it pretty well under control. They had 60,000 users, and we were able to go in and found, when we deployed Duo, that there were quite a few users and devices that were not compliant, like over half. And so quickly they were able to turn on, the policy that just says, hey, you've got to have encrypted and you've got to have screen lock enabled before you can access the specific applications, including those that they had to do e-prescription. And so there's again, just to go over, there's global policies, there's application policies, and there's user-based policies. Very flexible. And the fifth step in this process along the way is to basically secure all applications. And so the ability to be able to secure all applications, whether they're housed in the cloud, whether they're on-prem, whether you're using a VPN, whether you're using SSH or RDP or anything like that, is critical. And especially in a complex hybrid environments with legacy application, on-prem data centers, and funneling traffic back through a VPN. It makes it a really hard user experience if it's not the same experience over and over. If you have to use multiple solutions to provide the same access into the tools that they need to do their jobs. So one of the ways we do this, or what we like to say, is Duo is the world's easiest, most secure MFA. It's pretty cool. We actually can instantly integrate with all of your applications. I'm on a regular basis do proof of concepts with some of our larger customers, and we would go on site, back before COVID, and within a day, we would integrate all of your applications. I remember working with Health First in Florida. We had 10 different applications, including VPNs and single sign-on solutions and RDP and SSH and a bunch of other things. And within one day, we were able to integrate all of the applications that they needed, and then start testing with their pilot group. And enroll their users, right? Enrollment's a 5-click process, and users do it themselves. It's not something that the admin team has to go and do for them. And then to be able to authenticate within seconds, not having to grab something or retype a code somewhere else. Literally just verifying your identity, and then accepting the push, which is our most popular used method for sure. And the one case study that I'd like to share as well is that of Clarity Insights. At one point, they're actually kind of well known for being cloud first. So all of their applications, all of their workloads, the majority, I should say, were from the beginning cloud based. And when I talked about it earlier, that the complexity of securing the environment with all of the potential applications and devices that are accessing those and the tools that are available for that, they were using 4 different tools. One for MFA, one for endpoint trust, one for device posture, and trust score, before allowing users to access information on their networks in the cloud. And they were able to consolidate those into Duo, which then uses Active Directory for primary authentication, and then Duo handles everything else. So it was a pretty cool quote that we got from him, from Eric specifically, on a successful Duo deployment. And that's hopefully something that we're able to do for all of our customers. And with that, my presentation is finished, and I like to thank everybody for coming today and listening to the short presentation. We've got, I believe, 5 minutes. I don't know if that's something we open up for questions, or we can also obviously do chat within the virtual environment that we have at our booth, which is a new experience for me.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mark. First, everyone, let's give Mark a big round of applause, type clap in the chat. Please do that. Thank you very much. And we do have a few questions, so I will go ahead and ask these and let you address them, Mark. And if anyone else has any questions, please use the Q&A section to ask your question. So the first question is, do you support FID02?
Yes. Yep.
All right.
100%.
All right. Right. And then the second question is, how are you checking posture of a client without any client even perishable?
Yeah, so it's all user-based agent through browsers and the APIs that are available on endpoint devices through that user agent. So
Okay.
we also have an agent that can be deployed. I didn't go into that. That goes even into farther detail. So with the user-based installed agent or corporate deployed agent, we can get into things like is the firewall on their device? Do they have a password enabled on their laptop? Is the disk encrypted? Do they have the endpoint security agent running? Is Sentinel-1 running? Is Windows Defender running? Is AMP for endpoints for Cisco running? Before we allow access into the device. But even without that agent, we get all of the information I did show on the screen.
Great. Thank you, Mark. And there was a follow-up. They asked us, so it's a browser plugin? Question mark.
No, there's no plugin that has to be added. It's just the basic user data that's available through browser access. We have when you go to authenticate into Duo, we do primary authentication, typically against your local directory or a cloud-based directory. And then we'll prompt you with a Duo prompt. The Duo prompt loads an iframe today. It's going to be frameless here really soon in the future. And that frame is using the available API and user data to gather what we can, right? It's OS versions, OS levels, patch versions, browser versions, things like that. That we can use to help posture those devices. Because if they're at the latest versions, as we discussed, right, they're less vulnerable from attack.
Okay. Great. Any, think that might be it. Just want to give everyone another minute in case they have any other questions. If you have any other questions, please enter them in the Q&A session. Otherwise, we will break for lunch. I'm sure everybody's getting.
Yeah, I don't want to hold anybody up for lunch.
All right, I think we have one more here. Okay. How is Cisco differentiating between what AnyConnect can check for remote workers versus this?
Yeah, so we work without the VPN, right? So again, cloud apps, anything internal apps, we can host internal apps without a VPN through our proxy. But we work in conjunction with the VPN. So we can do these checks with the VPN, with AnyConnect. AnyConnect supports browser-based, logins, especially through the ASA, and I think the FTD will support that here next month. And so we can do all these posture checks while they're VPN into the network as well. But once you're on the network, there's some pretty cool things that Cisco can do with tools like Cisco ICE. And Cisco ICE goes way beyond even posturing against your IoT devices, et cetera, where Duo focuses on specifically the user and the user devices and the things they're using to access your internal resources.
All right. Well, I think that is it. That brings us right on 12:30 on the dot. So thank you once again for joining us, for presenting, for being a sponsor. And we hope everybody enjoys lunch and the rest of the conference.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.